Hey everyone, hope everyone's doing okay out there. If you're doing okay, just yell, hey, I'm doing okay. Don't worry about who's around you. High five your neighbor, say you're doing okay. It's going to be fun, it's going to be exciting. I'm ready to go. I hope you guys are ready to go. I'm promising to give you 110% of what I have and hopefully fill up your bucket of everything you need. So without further ado, let's get going here. So this is my family. Down in what I'm seeing is my right hand side. I'm assuming that's your right hand bottom as well. That's me and my wife Pam, and that's actually just last week we were in Napa Valley. That's a balloon ride we took there in Napa Valley with me and my Indiana Jones hat. And then on the top left, that's all of our children's. Pam, myself, our 5 children, and our newest addition, Jennifer, who's my son's fiance. My son Spencer's in his first year of medical school, actually just finished his first year of medical school, is leaving for Peru on Friday to do an international health trip. And my daughter Natalie, who's in the very front there, just got accepted to med school. She just graduated from college and she's starting med school in the fall at Baylor. That's our whole clan. So just wanted to introduce that so that you guys kind of get an idea of who I am and what we're doing. And so then you're probably, for those of you who don't know me, you may be wondering this question, you know, why should you listen to me? So let me kind of lay that out for you and see if this is worth your time and effort. My background is emergency medicine. I'm an emergency medicine physician. Went to medical school at the University of Utah, did my residency at Texas A&M at Scott and White Hospital in emergency medicine. I was the medical director of a level 2 trauma center, about 60,000 volume level 2 trauma center for 10 years. And in addition to that, I have 17 years in special forces as a Green Beret medic, and then eventually became the battalion surgeon for the 19th Special Forces Group. We love to travel. That's what we do. My wife and I love to travel. We've been on about 52 countries on 6 continents, and we don't just like to go stay in the Marriott and live at the hotel. We actually like to get in, and you know, we've had the opportunity to live with the Archuan Indians in Ecuador and the Amazon rainforest, and to just do some really most amazing, crazy things. We opened our first urgent care center in 2006, January of 2006. And it's so crazy to think that was just over 9 years ago now. And 9 years ago, what started as one clinic with 9 team members has now become 15 clinics in 4 states with 222 team members. So the reason I tell you that is because I want you to know that I eat my own cooking. I'm not up here giving a webinar or standing on stage and giving you some theory that I've never done or seen or tried. This is what I've found out. This is what I've learned, both the hard way and the easy way, and some things I want to pass on to you. How do you see the train coming? You know, what are some things to think about as you start to grow your business? A few years ago, we started, we brought all of our credentialing, billing, etc. in-house. We got really good at that, and we started to take on some other clients, and so we broke off another part of our company that we call WOWZA. And you'll know where the word WOWZA comes from here in a little while, but WOWZA basically is our billing and credentialing, contracting, and sort of medical services organization. And so just letting you know that we're pretty good at that as well, and I think we do an outstanding job, but I have that expertise that I can help you with in addition. Also, some people have asked me, you know, how do you play the real estate card? Do you own their own buildings? Do you do, you know, that kind of thing? And I have a big background in real estate. I did real estate long before I did medicine. I was buying houses when I was still undergrad. And so I've had a long 25-year history of owning and selling and doing contracts and leases, except on real estate. So I've got some good ideas of what does and doesn't work there as well. And then finally, the summit teaching. So, you know, about 4 years ago, we started saying, how can I give back? What can we teach? What value is there here? And I started Urgent Care Success, which at the time was called Urgent Care Management Monthly, for those of you who were around then. And that became Urgent Care Success, and we started a website, which we're fabulously redoing right now as we speak. It should be rolling out in the next 2 weeks. I think you guys will really like what we're doing. And then we started the Urgent Care Success Summit. And the Success Summit basically is a 3-day event where you come and we take you from point A to point B. It's all in the same room. It's a teaching event. It's not a conference. Conference I identify as, you go kind of from classroom to classroom. There's a different speaker on every stage, and there's not a real coordination. Here there's a coordination of taking you from point A to point B, so you leave with a business plan, if you will, or a plan to go back and build your business and create your culture and do those kinds of things. So that's really what we do and what I love to do. I'm going to be talking a lot about the summit that's coming up in June, June 4th to the 6th in Delray, Florida. I'm going to talk about that throughout this webinar. Obviously, this webinar is to give you a taste of what that would look like. However, I'm committed to giving you value whether you come to the summit or not. If you come to the summit, obviously I can't teach you in 1 hour today what I can teach you in 3 days there. And we're going to have some other amazing people there as well. But what I can guarantee you is to make this hour worth your time. I think that's what I'm going to try and do for you. So that's why I hope you'll listen. And so let's get started. So 5 things you must do to grow your urgent care center, and the 2 mistakes you should never make. And, I'm sure if we sat together in a room, you could come up with 5 or 6 things that you thought were really important things. These are the 5 things I came up with, and see if you agree with me and see if we can kind of figure these out and talk about these just a little bit. All right. So first thing, at some point you need to move from working in your business to working on your business. Now, I don't know where each of you are or what your roles are or those kinds of things within your business, and that doesn't really matter. What matters is you have to understand the concept that there's 2 parts of working in your business. One is working in the business. The patient's got to be checked in, they've got to be seen, the x-ray's got to be taken, the drug screen's got to be done. All of that is working in the business. Working on your business is where you carve out time purposely to step aside for an hour a week or an hour a day or whatever size your business is and whatever that requires, that you take the time to say, all right, I realize we're climbing the rungs here of the ladder, but is the ladder leaning against the right wall? Are we in the right place? Are we doing the right thing? You need to start thinking about things like values. What is your vision for your business? What are the values of your business? At our business, our values are amazing customer service, financial success, and an awesome place to work. And they've been those same 3 things since we started. Those are unchangeable. Your values are things that are unchangeable. We're going to talk a lot more about those at the summit, obviously, and give you an opportunity to fill those out for yourself. Second question we always ask is, why do you exist? What do you exist for? And a few years ago, we actually sent this out and said, we exist too. And then we had our team members sort of develop their answers to why we actually exist and what that means. And we came up with it. For us, it meant we exist to serve the communities in which we are, to provide a WOWZA experience for our customers, and to develop what we call a legacy of leaders. As soon as we decided why we existed, everything in our business changed, because every decision we make now starts looking like one of those things of why we exist. But if you never take the time of, grinding through and seeing the patients and doing all the things it needs to do and step back and get the entire team involved, I just think at some point, if you're going to grow your business, this becomes more and more important. What is your mission? And by mission, I don't mean mission statement, because mission statements are usually something people draw out in all fancy letters, stick them on a wall, and nobody knows what they say. By mission, I mean, what are you trying to accomplish? Well, think of a military mission. In the next 3 years, we will open 3 new clinics in these 2 markets, or whatever your mission is. That's what a mission is. And then from that mission, you develop strategies. And those strategies basically answer one question. Here's the question. If that's your mission, why are you not already there? If you own 1 urgent care center and your goal is to own 3, I would ask you, why don't you already own 3? When you answer that question and you answer it honestly, it will start to provide the strategies. So the reason we don't already own it is we don't have enough capital. Good. Strategy number 1, how do we raise the capital that it's going to take to grow? The other reason is we don't have the right team in place. Good. Strategy number 2, what do we need to do to recruit and retain the right team to do it? So take your values, you create your mission. From your mission, you create strategies, and those strategies answer the question, why are we not already there? And once you identify the roadblocks of why you're not already there, the strategies address the roadblocks. It's a huge, huge thing that most people just don't see. And we're going to spend a lot of time on that in June here. But even if you don't come, that's a great opportunity now for you to start thinking along those lines. Okay. Finally, markets. Have you defined your market? Who is your target population? If I were to say to you, tell me your ideal customer, tell me your ideal patient, can you tell me in a sentence or less? And you need to be able to do it because you need to be able to think about what is it that customer is looking for. Nobody cares what you're looking for. I wish that wasn't true, but honestly, nobody cares what I'm looking for or what you're looking for. They only care what they're looking for. So the more you can get into their head, the more you can start to think, what do they see when they wake up? What are they thinking about when their kid's sick? What are they thinking about when they have to take time off of work? And what is it that's valuable to them? The more you can provide that, that's what we call a WOWZA experience. What specifically would you need to do to attract that perfect customer? How if you could only identify one customer and you could go attract that customer, what specific, not general, because generalities kill clarity, what specific thing could you go and do? And then finally, you got to learn to execute. Execution is the key. You give me someone who can execute and all the other stuff is secondary. A lot of times you know what to do, you just don't know how to do it. And so you need people who can execute. And execution is about defining the process, what exactly it is that needs to happen, what's the process we're going to go through, what are the goals, if you will, and then how are we going to accomplish that? What are the steps how do we put rubber, how do we go from pie in the sky to actually putting rubber on the road? What are the things that are going to need to be done in order to make that happen? Then answer this question: what skills, tools, and training do the people accomplishing that need in order to be successful? Why are they not being successful? Or if they are, how could they be more successful? How can I provide them? My whole role is to provide them with the skills and tools that they need in order for them to be successful. And then ask this question: how will they measure success? How will they know they're being successful? Going into something, how are they going to know at the end whether or not they were successful? Are there certain landmarks laid out that everybody knows that you've agreed on, that they've helped to develop, where they know if they're successful? That's very key to this. And then how do you align rewards and compensation to that execution? In other words, if it happens, here's the reward. If it doesn't happen, here's the penalty. How do you align rewards and penalties to the execution of the mission? And that's really what this boils down to. That is working on your business and not just working in your business. That's a very different thing. I meet a lot of operators, a lot of good docs and non-docs who own clinics, etc., who are good at, the day-to-day thing, but they're have inability sometimes to step away and look at that. And to be honest with you, that's what the summit's all about. How do you take 3 days off and just go sit for 3 days and work on your business? Because that's what this is really all about. Now, it's also high energy and it's a lot of fun and all of those things. But at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is get you to execute and to create a plan for your business. All right. So second thing, understand where you are in the business cycle. Many, many times I see frustration in people, owners and operators of medical practices and urgent cares, who say, you know what, I read this book and here's what the book said. The problem with reading a book is business is not a bathrobe. One size does not fit all. And think about it in your own business, what might be a really, really good idea today would have been a terrible idea a year ago. And what might be a great idea a year from now might be a horrible idea today. So just because something is a good idea and somebody wrote a book about it does not necessarily mean it's the right time and the right thing for your business right now. If you could draw a little arc if you're taking notes, draw a little arc on a piece of paper. And on that arc, on the left side, put infant, then toddler, teenager. By the time you get to the top of the arc, it's adult, and then going down the other side, middle age, aging, and old. Just like a human being has a life cycle that goes through all of those things, a business also has a life cycle. And in the beginning, certain things happen that don't happen later on. And knowing where you are in that life cycle allows you to decide, all right, is this a normal problem or is this a bad problem? So you think about a baby, right? If a little baby's shitting its pants, that's okay. It's a problem, right? But it's a problem you expected from a baby. However, if a 25-year-old's still shitting his pants, that's a different kind of problem, right? So if your business is shitting its pants and you're a baby, that's okay. We call that a cash flow problem, right? If you have a cash flow in the beginning, That's an expected problem. Everybody has that problem. It's a problem, you have to solve it, but it's an expected problem. If you're still having cash flow problems and you're a mature business, that's a different kind of problem, right? There's a difference between a baby going to the bathroom in his pants and a baby who's turning blue. And you have to be able to understand which is a problem that was to be expected and which is an emergency and is about to kill the business. And that's why knowing where you are in the life cycle becomes very important. And knowing where you are in your life cycle is also important. You take a business owner, if you will, if you're an owner, you take a business owner who's in his 60s who has a new business, that might look very different than a 23-year-old with a new business. The life cycle of the person and the life cycle of the business, and how do those two things interact with each other. So here's now what I want you to do is, next to that arc that you drew, I want you to draw some stairs. I want you to draw 3 stairs. And on the bottom stair, I want you to write the word niche. And on the second stair, write the word leverage. And on the third stair, write the word systems. Now, each of these is a step in your business. Most of you listening to this are probably still somewhere between infancy and niche. And the reason I know that is because that tends to be who we attract, those people who, 1 to 5 clinics, let's say. And from 1 to 5 clinics, you've somehow kind of grown up and you've developed this little niche. You now know how to take care of patients, you know how to do some things, but you're still struggling with maybe patient volume, or you're still struggling with cash flow issues or culture within your business, but you've got a niche. You can run the business day to day, those kinds of things. Here's what it takes to get from infancy to niche: hard work and experimentation. Now, I don't know anything about your business, but I guarantee you those are the 2 things it took, because those are the things it takes. You got to do a lot of hard work and you got to experiment. That's what leads up to that kind of a business. The problem is, and a lot of you are on this call because you're saying, I'm at niche. How do I go from where I am? How do I go from 3 to 8? That's a tough question for me. Or how do I go from 1 to 3? And at some point you have to move from niche to what I call leverage. And leverage is a whole different ballgame. Leverage is about how do we now take advantage of and leverage other people's time, talents, intelligence, and money other than your own, or other than the small core group with which you started. The reason you see in the industry of urgent care a lot of what you call roll-ups, right, where you have these capital partners and venture capitalists, et cetera, who are doing these roll-ups where they buy twosies and threesies and they roll them all up into one big group, is because the same skill set that it took to start and to become successful with 3 clinic is a completely different skill set than it takes to go from 3 to 20. And they know that. So as soon as they, quote, roll it up, they bring in a CEO who now knows how to take it to leverage. And that's what they do. However, you don't see them out there starting the first one. That's because they don't have that skill set. That's an entrepreneurial skill set. So leverage is the problem with leverage, and the reason most people can't do it is the problem is control. Your experience that you had getting you to niche says, if I just work harder and experiment more, that'll be the thing. But the reality is it isn't. You have to let go, and most of us who are entrepreneurs are, we're little control freaks. We have to be in control of every single thing that happens, and the problem is growth and control are inversely related. You can be in control of everything, but if you are, you cannot grow. Or you can grow, but you're going to have to give up some control. You're going to have to trust other people to run your business. And it's either one's okay. You can stay small and be in complete control, or you can grow. But you can't be in complete control and grow. That cannot happen. So that's the problem. So you need to learn to delegate. Now, you need to learn the difference between abdicate and delegate. Abdicate basically means I'm giving it to somebody else and I don't care what happens. And delegate means I'm putting them in charge, but I've still got my hand there. I've still got some critical drivers. We're still doing some things together, but I'm trusting them and relying on them to work in my best interest. And that's really the key. The key, that is the number one reason if you're struggling to grow, that's the reason. I mean, honestly, I can tell you right now, if there's a problem in your business, it's you. Just like if there's a problem in my business, it's me. Because if Warren Buffett came and took over your business or my business, it would grow. And the reason is he's not limited by the same self-doubts and problems that I have. So then it comes down to, well, who should make the decisions then? And the reality is, think about this, if there's a girl working the front desk at one of your clinics and there's a problem at the front desk, who should solve that problem? The answer is the girl at the front desk. She knows more about the problem and what needs to be solved than her supervisor or you or me or anybody else. And the reason she's not telling us is two reasons. Number one, we didn't ask her. And because we don't ask her, she's not going to tell us. And number two, we tend to, I'm not saying we all do this, we're all trying not to do this, but we tend to ask people to check in their brains, right? When you clock in, make sure you clock in your brain also so you can do exactly what we tell you to do. And then when you clock out, go ahead and check your brain out and take it home, because at home, you're able to make decisions like what house to buy and what school your kids should go to and where you should buy your clothes, etc. But at work, we don't want you to think. We just want you to do what we tell you to do. And obviously, I'm making that dramatic on purpose, but that is what happens. And growth is about leverage, which is about changing that process. And then finally, the third step is systems. Systems, everybody who reads a book, I got one urgent care, I got 7 people. And our problem is we just don't have any systems in place. And I always am hesitant when people say that, to say, wait a minute, I'm not sure systems, you may be putting systems in a little early. Systems have advantages as you grow to make things more organized. However, remember what happened in the beginning? What made you successful from infancy to niche? Experimentation. And systems decrease the ability to experiment. And so putting them in place too soon, can you imagine? We're going to systemize an infant. It's going to get up at a certain time. It's going to eat at a certain time. It's not going to work. You're going to kill the baby. And that's what happens with your business. So systems are a good place, are a good thing put in at the right time. Or if you have a business that has, McDonald's, systems is perfect. You have a bunch of high school kids who you don't want thinking, so you tell them exactly what to do and say the entire time they're at work. Take that same thing and give it to a physician or a nurse who is able to think and do things on their own, and systems will kill them. So yeah, be a little bit careful and understand the difference of where you are in the business cycle and when your business is in the business cycle before you just implement things. All right. Woo! I hope you guys are okay. Everybody okay? Say if you're okay, say you're okay. All right. Nobody didn't say they weren't okay, so we're going to go on. All right. Number 3, putting the people process first, make it an awesome place to work. So everyone says, you know what, my greatest asset are my people, and no one treats them like that. So I think that you have to take that from your head to your heart and say, you know what, actually the right team, you give me the right team and I can accomplish anything. This might come from my special forces background. If my A team had the right people on it, we could literally, we thought, do anything. But if you have the wrong people, you're going the wrong direction. And I don't care how good your strategy or your market or whatever, the team is always the most important thing. If you got the right team, you can figure it out. I love the second part, says if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. I think a lot of people say, well, you know what I like to do is surround myself with really smart people, but secretly inside they still think they're the smartest person in the room. And as long as you have to have that, I think you're either in the wrong room and you're going to have difficulty growing your business. And so, and then you got to go from recruiting to maintaining them. And some of the things we've learned, and you'll learn more about if you come to the summit and more about if you read our newsletters and those kinds of things, is, it's the hire slow or fire fast. It's hire slow and fire fast. How many times have you held on to someone too long? That's probably just me. I'm probably the only one that's done this. You've held on to them too long, and when you finally let them go, you think, oh my gosh, why didn't I do that 6 months ago? Why did I wait so long to do what needed to be done? Best for them and me, by the way. It's best for, nobody wants to be in a job where they're miserable or they're not appreciated. So it's actually best for both people. And we use what we call zero-based thinking, which is a concept I learned from Brian Tracy, which is basically this. If I knew then what I know now, would I still hire them? And if the answer to that is no, let them go. I know you need the shift filled. You'll find a way. Just let them go. That's what needs to happen. So you can't you can't want it more than the person does. When I hire somebody, I want to be super successful. But as time goes on with some people, what I find as I get older and older is, you know what? I want it more than they do. And I can't want it I can't want it for them. In Texas, way I was saying, it's called, you can't push a rope, right? I mean, you can't push a rope. You can pull a rope, but you can't push a rope. And so You can't want it more than them. You have to want it for them, but they have to want it. And what you'll find is the cream will rise. It rises to the top. And that's one of the things we've learned. Another thing to ask yourself before you let them go, we always make ourselves at least say this question: are they in the wrong seat or are they on the wrong bus? In other words, maybe they're the right kind of person we want in our organization. Maybe we've just got them doing the wrong thing for their talent and skill set. Maybe they got the right personality. Think about this. When you hire someone, we tend to hire based on skills, right? Oh, can you type? Can you do this? Can you see patients? Whatever that thing is. But when's the last time you fired someone because they couldn't do the skill? Usually we end up firing based on personality or personality problems or whatever, not being able to get along with their colleagues. So we hire on skills, but we tend to fire on culture. And so now in our process, we hire on both. We do a skill set interview. We do a culture interview. Actually, we have a 5-interview process. We actually make it very difficult to get a job at our business. They have to do an online application. They have to have an on-phone interview. They have to have a skills interview. They have to have a culture interview. They have to have a working interview, and then they get 90 days probation. Because we've learned that we'd rather take the time and hire slow than find the wrong people. And still occasionally we get fooled anyway because we have 222 people. But we've learned those skills, and we didn't invent them. We've stolen them from other great companies like Southwest Airlines and Whole Foods and REI. And you look at a place that has those kind of people and just kind of see what is it that they do. So those are kind of some of the things we've learned of putting people first. I feel like one of my number one things is putting people first, driving culture. How do we drive culture? What is the culture in your business? We're going to talk tons and tons about culture at the summit, because we'll have Pam, my wife, who's our chief leadership officer, and her entire job in our organization is culture, developing leaders. And that's what she spends all day, every day thinking about. And she's done some amazing things in our company that I haven't seen done anywhere else. And, we'd love to share some of those with you guys. So, all right. So number 4, providing what we call a WOWZA experience. And WOWZA to us means answering simply this one question: what would we have to do so our patients will say, I'd be crazy to go anywhere else? That once they've been here, they're not going anywhere else. This is the place they're going to want to go. And what else could we do? How do we 10 times their expectations? They came expecting A, B, and C, and we gave them D through Z in addition to that. And they didn't see any of that coming. What else could we do? How do we do it? Our job is to your entire job is to get your customers to distinguish in your favor. Why would they distinguish in your favor over your competition? What things do you do that they don't do? And if your answer is great medical care, you're going to have a hard time being successful, because they expect great medical care. That's the lowest common denominator. When a patient comes in, they expect that your doc, PA, nurse practitioner is going to prescribe the right antibiotic for a sinus infection. What they didn't expect is how the rest of the place functioned, how awesome everybody was, how quick they got in and out, how everybody called them by name, how there was free Wi-Fi, how they got water, whatever the thing is that you're doing or should be doing that distinguishes you from your competition. That's a WOWZA to us, and that's what we call that. We trademarked that word, so you can't use it. No, I'm just kidding. Actually, I'm not that much kidding. You have to understand the human needs. So, there's human needs, and I'm not going to go into the whole talk on human needs. We do that there. It's a whole hour-and-a-half talk. But essentially, Tony Robbins invented a thing called the 6 human needs, and basically their certainty, uncertainty, significance, and love and connection are the first 4. And if you just understand those 4 and say, all right, what can we do with our patients that would give them certainty? When they get here, that there's certain things are going to happen. What can we do to give them a little uncertainty, a little playfulness, a little, something they weren't expecting? How can we make them feel significant? Because significance for all of us is a human need. How can we make them feel significant? And finally, is there something we can do to give them a little love and connection? You meet 4 of those needs and they will become addicted to you. That's because that's what happens. If you go out and meet someone's needs, you think about it. If you have a significant other who makes you feel certain and still has variety and uncertainty and makes you feel significant and love and connection, you own them. I mean, that's in a good way, in the way they want to be owned. And that's the same thing with your customers and your patients. So think about how you would do that. We're going to talk a whole bunch more about that as we go along, and certainly at the summit we'll have lots of conversations and exercise on do that. The other thing is, we talk about creating raving fans. There's a book actually out there called Creating Raving Fans. It's talking about customers. I highly recommend it. It's a good book. But honestly, as I've thought about it, this distinction just came to me recently. I think the best way to create raving fans is to create raving team members. If your team members are super excited to be at work, they're super excited on the mission that you're accomplishing and what you're doing, and they're bought in 100%, your patients can feel that. And if they're not, they can also feel that. Do not be fooled. Putting a system in place to try and make them happy with unhappy team members is not the case. You might ask why I keep calling them team members, not employees. We don't have employees. Employees come in late, leave early, take long lunches, and don't work very hard. But I've been members of a team, and the right kind of team comes to work early, leaves late, doesn't take lunches, works their ass off, and has a blast doing it. And so we emphasize team and not so much employees. So that providing that WOWZA experience, I think, that's the one thing that I do see a lot of urgent cares and even other medical clinics are finally catching on to this idea that, it used to be the bar was set so low in medicine. I mean, I had a doctor's appointment this morning with my orthopedic surgeon. It's still set low in a lot of places, but I will tell you that it's getting better. And I think part of the reason it's getting better is because of what we're doing, not necessarily me, but our industry, and what we're doing out there and making patients feel better is making everybody else step up their game as well. So congratulations to all of you on that. So finally, number 5, understanding your financials. I know this isn't a subject a lot of you like to hear about. Some of you out there are like super excited right now and clapping because we're finally going to talk about the money. And some of you are saying that's the last thing I want to talk about. Good. That's what makes the world go round. But here's what I know. If you can't read the dials, you don't know if the airplane's going up or down. I'm a pilot, and let me tell you, if you can't figure out what the 6-pack means, if you don't know what your airspeed and your altimeter and those things are saying, your turn coordinator, then you're going to crash that airplane. And the same is true with your accounting. Unfortunately, the language of business is not chocolate. I wish it was chocolate. That would be so much more fun, or cookies or football or something. But the language of business is accounting. And so you have to be able to speak the language in order to run a business. You have to know, what does that look like? It does not mean you have to be an accountant. In fact, being an accountant is counterintuitive because accountants mostly have never owned businesses. And the reason is they're accountants. They take a story and they turn that story into number. And what you need to be able to do is take the numbers, the piece of paper they give you, 3 pieces of paper, the P&L, the balance sheet, the cash flow statement, and turn that back into a story that then you can make decisions, and you can make decisions about how we're going to change the way we do things so it'll change the story on the next 3 pieces of paper you get next month. But it's key. I mean, you have to know how to do that. And I spend a lot of time at the summit teaching what does an owner or an operator of a medical practice urgent care clinic need to know about their financials. Look, most owners basically look at the P&L. If they get anything at all, they just get a P&L, which is also called an income statement. They just get that piece of paper. They look at the bottom line, and if it's positive, they go have a drink. And if it's negative, they go have 2 drinks. And that's about how much they understand it. And I think you need a little bit more than that. I think you need to have an understanding of how the 3 pieces of paper fit together. Is your system on accrual? Are you on a cash basis? How do those things go together, and what does that look like? So we're going to spend some time on that in the summit. But for now, best thing I can tell you is I actually did a 6-part webinar that's on our website. It's called Urgent Care Financials. You're certainly more than welcome. I'd encourage you, in fact, to go take a look at that. Even if whether you are or aren't coming to the summit, that's worth spending your time on those and seeing what you can do. It's everything from accounting to how we do accounts receivable to formulas to all those kinds of things. And on that, you have to understand medical billing. Medical billing is a unique animal, as most of you know by now. And your aging AR report is huge. And how do you work your AR? And what are the criteria that you have in place for working that AR? You have to know it. You can't ignore it and hope it's going to be okay. What rules and controls are in place to make sure what you think is going out is actually going out and doing it in a timely fashion. So You have to be able to use a performa. You know, if you're going into a future location, can you put a performa together, and what does that look like, and what are the components? What are the assumptions when you do a performa? What happens if you change the assumption, and those kinds of things. So you have to be able to have the ability to look at those and be able to look at a debt versus equity ratio or a quick ratio. And if you don't know what those are, again, go to the webinars that I produced on that, take a look at those. I obviously can't do a 6-part webinar in 1 hour, but the point of this whole thing is you need to know your financials. Here's what else I think. If you're the owner, I don't know who else on the call, but if you're the owner of the deal, that's not something you can hire out. You can hire someone to consult. You can hire somebody to help you, but you cannot rely on your accountant or your CPA or your office manager to understand your financials if you don't understand your financials. You have to be able to take that on yourself. All right. Everybody excited? So think about it. If you just did those 5 things right there, all you got to do, make it sound easy, move from working in your business to on your business, understanding where you are in the business life cycle and what to do at each point in those life cycles, putting the people process first, creating an awesome place to work for your team members, provide a WOWZA experience to understand your financials. Honestly, if you just go home and focus on one of those 5, it'll double your business. On the other hand, there are always a couple things that you should not do. And I could name probably 10 things you should not do, but I'm going to tell you 2 of the most common that I see all the time. And I think these 2 are very, very important. So the 2 mistakes you should never make. Mistake number 1, thinking that growth is the answer to all questions. By far the biggest mistake. I mean, every time I talk to an urgent care medical practice owner, the question is always, how do I grow my business? They never say if I should grow my business. And I think the if question needs to be answered way before the how, because you know what? You don't want to grow a tumor, right? I mean, if you're losing money every month, growing that's probably not a good idea. And yet, so many times, I'm serious. I see lots of people who say, we're losing money every month. I think if we just open 3 more of these things, that would do it. It would do it, all right. It would do something. So this is a legitimate question. You have to ask yourself, is this the time to grow, or is this the time to hunker down, get the blocking and tackling right, get the internal processes right, get the strategies right, get all of the marketing piece, get all of that in place and do it. I'll give you a perfect example. In 2014, we grew very dramatically. We opened a clinic in July. We opened 3 clinics in October. We opened a clinic in November. We opened a clinic in January. And so that was big growth. And we outgrew our resources. And so not our financial resources, but our ability to feel like we were providing WOWZA experience for everyone. And so I basically made the decision that 2015, it was going to be about hunker down and let's get our processes back to being right. Let's get the things where, what we need to do. There has to be a time when growth is the right answer, and there has to be a time when it's not. And so I think that's really, really important. How many clinics do you have to have, right? I mean, whenever I'm at an urgent care conference, I always hear, well, how many clinics do you have? As if that has any relevance. That's about ego, not money. Nobody ever says, what was your net profits last year? Everybody says, how many clinics do you have? You could have 6 clinics and be much less lucrative and much more broke than the guy who has 1 super successful clinic. In fact, I know a super successful clinic, a guy who's on my board, that as far as net profits and taking money to the house, I'd put up against any 3 urgent cares, because it's not about the number of urgent cares, it's about how you run those and what you do. You don't have to have a baby to save a marriage, right? I mean, that's a really bad idea. People do it all the time. So, what? Our marriage is failing. Maybe we should have a baby. And that's a really bad idea. If you have a partnership that's having trouble, if you have a clinic that's having trouble, if you have a staff that's having trouble, having a new baby, which is a new clinic, is a really, really bad idea. You decide, do I need to be rich or do I need to be big? On the other hand, the whole point of this call is, how do I grow this thing? So this is kind of a good time to have this conversation. I've never had anybody come up to me and say, you know what, if my business was just half the size it is today, I think I'd be killing it. So I know that the reason you're on here is you want to grow. I just ask you to pause and say, is this the time, and are we growing the right thing, or do we need to spend some time getting it right before we go open the next location? So I think that's a big mistake I see people make. The other big mistake is this, and that is mistaking marketing for growth. right? People say, the problem is we're only seeing 15 patients a day. Our problem is we need to get out there and get the word out and get more people in here. That's our problem. Well, I have to ask you a question. Is that the problem or is that the symptom? And if that's the symptom, what's the real problem? Is it that they don't know about you, or is it that they're trying you and then fired you? So marketing is about getting people to try you. Growth is about never letting them go. Ask yourself, how big would my business be if I still had every customer who'd ever tried me? If you still had every customer who ever tried you, would you still have a growth problem? Well, if you still had every customer that ever tried you, you don't have a marketing problem. You have a growth problem, which is an internal thing. Internally, people need to get out of their car, and when they get back to their car, they go, holy crap, I gotta tell all my friends about this place. That's growth and has zero to do with marketing. I'm all about marketing. Marketing is great. It's about websites and SEO and PPC and brochures and going to events, and I'm good. I'm good with all that. I think that's important. But don't confuse that conversation. How should we market our urgent care with how should we grow our urgent care? And that's a very common mistake people make, is to say, we need to grow. Let's go market some more. Well, it doesn't do you any good. If you're an apple picker, right, and you pick apples all day long and you put them in your pocket, and at the end of the day, you don't have any apples, that's because they fell out of your pocket. So you can go out and market all you want. People, a lot of times you hear people say, the hardest sale is the first sale. That's crap. What's the hardest sale? The 35th sale, the 138th sale. When they just keep coming back over and over and over again, and you get the true lifetime value of the customer and all of their friends and family, that's growth. That's what growth is all about. So don't confuse the marketing discussion with the growth discussion. And I think both are great discussions. We'll talk about both at the summit at length. So let me just take, so those are the 5 things and that I think make you successful. The 2 things I think you should try really hard to never do. Let me talk to you briefly, if I might, just about the summit. Please, 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 if you can come. It's going to be a blast. It's in Delray, Florida. We're on the beach, so it's going to be great. This is the website, urgentcaresuccess.com. Click register. I've just been told this. Molly said the first 5 people to sign up after this webinar get a 30-minute consultation with me free. She says 500. I think I'd make you, if I don't make you $5,000 in that 30-minute evaluation, I'll give you another 30 minutes. So that we can make that happen. That's easy. But I need you to go to that. What else do I need to? So let me tell you some other speakers. My very, very good friends and mentors, Mark Ford, who is his pen name is Michael Masterson, New York Times best-selling author. He's taken multiple business from garage to $100 million level. He's a genius, in my opinion. He's been my mentor for a long, long time. He's agreed to come and talk about what you should be doing with your money right now, your own personal finances. He has a website called the Palm Beach Newsletter. He's going to be there. Another good friend and mentor of mine, Frank McKinney. You can look him up. He's a real estate mogul. He builds $60 million spec houses in Florida, but he's also doing some really gracious and amazing projects in Haiti, building villages. I actually went to Haiti with him last spring, and we built a village in Haiti, and he's going to come and basically talk about giving back and the things that, part of richness of life. And what we talk about at the summit is how to integrate life and business, because you can't really leave your home at home and your business at business. These 2 things integrate together. And the entire summit is, how do I integrate my life and my contribution and my love and connection and my business all into one thing, so that I can say my whole mantra in life is to be able to say, I can't tell if I'm working or playing. And that's really what this is about. And so Frank's coming to do that. Larry Earl, Dr. Larry Earl is coming to talk about occupational medicine. He's probably the guy in the country that knows about, he isn't probably, he is the guy in the country that knows about the integration of occupational medicine and urgent care. He's going to be there. Hal Patton and Candace Smith are going to be there talking about credentialing and contracting, what to know when you sign a contract, talking about billing. I think Hal is probably the leading expert in that in the country, and Candace is certainly one of the leading billers in the country. They're going to be there. Pamela will be there talking about culture. It's just a great, and Bill Johnson III, my personal estate attorney, who I've known for 25 years. is going to be there to talk about estate things. You know, what kind of entities should you set up? What should you do to protect your business and your estate and your own personal estate? He's done me the favor. He's flying in from Dallas, and he's going to come and talk on that. So it's a combination, honestly, of how do we build the best business we can? How do we leave with a notebook in our hand of a plan to go execute? How do I become the best person I can? How do we create the best team we can? And how do we have the best life? And that's really, if you look at the testimonials in the previous summits, that's what people say. You know, I came here thinking I was going to get one thing, and I got a whole different thing. And I hope that comes across in my voice. I'm very passionate about that. I mean that with all of my heart. I really think you'll come away with that. If you get there and for any reason you know, after the first day you say, you know what, this just isn't for me, I'll give you your money back. That's not a thing. It's guaranteed. If you're not happy, I'm not happy. So come. We're looking forward to that. We have a link for you to go to. Hang on, I'm going to have Molly put this on in the chat. She's going to put the link of a new video we just created for the summit. And you just click on the link and it'll take you to the video if you want to watch that. But I mean, just sign up, get there, find a way, cancel whatever you have already planned that weekend and get there for 3 days. And I promise it'll be worth your time and effort. So anything more you want to say about that, Molly?
Nope, I'm putting the link in right now. You can click that, and that's to go to the Urgent Care Success Summit website. From there, you can check out the speakers as Dr. Tim just listed. You can read more about them there, the schedule, you know, the hotel accommodations, and of course to register. And then what I'm also going to do is to give a little bit better feel of the energy that goes on there at the summit. We have a video that really displays what goes on there. So I'm going to copy that into the chat as well. So definitely check out both of those links to read a little bit more. And of course, like I said, or like Dr. Tim said, the first 5 that do register are going to get that consultation, which is an amazing offer. So I hope many of you can join us. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me directly. I'm Molly, MOLLY, at urgentcaresuccess.com. I'll be more than happy to answer any questions you may have, or if you need any help with registering or with any accommodations or any questions in general. So thank you all so much. And
all right, guys. Thanks, everyone. We appreciate you being here. Thanks for your trust, and thanks for studying together. Talk to you soon.